Scott. Um, it is good to have all of you here, and we're going to continue talking about some of the principles of secure functioning. The one we're going to talk about today has me really fired up, actually. So you might get my pulpit pounding persona today. I think this is the most important commitment to have in a secure functioning relationship. We're going to talk about absolute mutual protection. So let's break that down word by word. Absolute means total and complete. It's not subject to the ebbs and flows of our feelings. When our commitment to absolute mutual protection in relationship is absolute, it doesn't matter how in the relationship I feel with you, how in love I feel, whether I'm considering divorce or a change. Still, everything I do, my attitude is still this relationship, and you are protected at all times. Now, I'll put the caveat in the beginning here that I put in last week. If you're in an abusive relationship, none of this matters. The rules are completely different for an abusive relationship. So if that's where you find yourself, you might even be benefited by jumping off the webinar and calling the local domestic violence shelter and getting information about how you can be helped there, because anything that I have to say along these lines will not help you if your relationship is abusive. Um, with that commitment to absoluteness, the really important part there, and this goes for any principle of secure functioning, it can't be subject to your whims and your emotions, and that's really hard to do. Principles are hard to live by. If you have a principle that's not hard for you to live by, it's not a real principle. It's like setting a goal to do something that you already do naturally. It's nice to mark the progress, but it doesn't really push you to grow. And that's what these principles are for, is to push us to grow, give us a firm base to return to, a North Star to return to in relationships when things get hard, because they will. Even when you have really secure, good, defined, secure governing principles, things will still get hard and things will still go wrong. But these set this is where we come back to. So let's look at the next part, protection. Some things that this means, it means I do what's best for you always. You also in protection, it's only mutual protection if what you do that is best for your partner is also good for you. It has to work for you, it has to work for them. Your vulnerabilities don't get exploited for my gain or my benefit. So if I know that you have a lot of self-doubt, I won't utilize that to get myself out of trouble, or I won't bring that into an argument at any time, because I know that's a place of vulnerability for you. I'll fight fairly. I won't attack your vulnerabilities. Mutual or protection is not just about preventing from feeling heartache. Protection is also serving as a watch person on the tower. I'll let you know if something difficult is coming up. I'll let you know if I see a vulnerability, or if I see some way that you might be sideways that's going to bring you pain in the future. So sometimes the protection is tough conversations. Sometimes the protection part is, I have some concerns, and I know you might be angry in hearing this, or I know this may not be easy for you to hear, but I'm committed to what's best for you. I'm committed to you being safe and whole at all times. So if you're doing something that jeopardizes that, I'll let you know. In the week, the run up to the race, I'm usually not a basket case around stuff like this, but for some reason I was really anxious, burning the candle on both ends. And one night during the week, after I'd spent the evening, coming home from work, doing dinner with the family, hanging out, trying to get race stuff attended to on the side, it was about midnight, almost 1 o'clock. I was coming in from the back patio. I had been resealing my tires on my bike, so they were good to go. And of course, it was the first time I've ever done that. Huge learning curve. my wife was kind enough to come and sit out with me and talk with me as I was doing that, which, was a huge calming thing. But we get in, she looks at me and she said, I think you have a tendency to take on too much. um, and that's all she said. It's not what I loved hearing, because the way that I had planned things to go, I didn't really leave myself an option to not take it all on. In hindsight, what I'll do next year is I'll take my bike into the shop. I'll get an appointment 2 months in advance. I'll take my bike into the shop 2 weeks in advance, and I'll make sure somebody who knows what they're doing gets it in tip-top condition. But that was one of those mutual protection things. I see you running hard. I see you, burning the candle both ends. I know that's not good for you. I'm worried about you. So protection does not equal feeling good. That's not the goal of protection. The goal of protection is I let you know about threats, whether I'm the source of that threat or not. I let you know about those as far in advance as possible. I want to give you enough notice so that you can prepare, you can be ready. If there are threats that come from me, I stay laser focused on those so that I can minimize, eliminate, and mitigate the impacts of my threats to you and to our relationship. So in summation, protection is I have your back no matter what, and you feel that. Me saying I have your back and you feeling that are two different things. And when it comes to is this relationship one where there's absolute mutual protection, the only opinion that matters is your partner's. Because if they don't feel it, it doesn't exist. Likewise for them, if you don't feel it from them, it doesn't exist. Sometimes what that gets into is what I need in order to feel protected isn't something that you're able or willing to do. And that's a different conversation. But if this is our goal, we'll communicate about what we need. We'll be realistic about whether we can accept that and give that or not. And then we make decisions from there. I skipped over mutual. I'll go back in my notes here. So mutual means we both do it. Nobody's waiting for the other one to start, even if feelings get hurt. So it's an immature framework to say, I'll do this when you do this. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. That's an immature relationship framework. And it'll never work. The protection aspect will not work if you're hanging back and saying, when you protect me, I'll protect you. Because doing back to somebody what they did to you that hurt you actually isn't rebalancing. It's not justice. It's just switching who gets to act out. The focus isn't on I'll give you kindness always. It's when I am able to do it, I'll do it, and I'll let you know when I can. That's part of the mutuality. We will communicate. If you and I were rock climbing together and I was ready to make an ascent of a pitch, and I call back to you to see if you're ready to belay me, and you say that you're not, I have to really have to make a decision there about whether I'm going to attempt the pitch or not. Am I going to let you get in a position where you're ready to catch me? Or am I going to go ahead and go it on my own? The mutuality is we communicate about where we're at and we make decisions about how we move based on that. Principle, like I said earlier, principles are really hard. This is part of the mutuality of these principles is we set these knowing that we'll both struggle, knowing this will be hard for both of us. So the mutual part of this is we're both committed to struggle. We're both committed to help each other in the struggle. And I would add to that, we're both committed to support each other in the struggle. So when you get it wrong, I can be hurt. I can be angry. I can be upset. But if we're really mutually committed to this principle or to the protection, I'll also find at least a little sliver of compassion. Especially if you can come back and own that you hurt me, especially if you can come back and own that you were asleep on your watch and you didn't offer protection. I can keep a little sliver of compassion open, knowing that we're both having to learn how to do something that doesn't come naturally for us. If it did come naturally for us, we wouldn't have to have this as a principle. It would already work. The other thing I would add to the end of this is this has to happen in public and private. And this is where I have a little bit of fire in me. because I work with a lot of couples, and very often I have my couples get in fights about, what are you saying to your support people about me? What are you saying to your parents about me? What are you saying to our children about me? And 100% of the time, the partner that's asked, what are you saying about me, fires back with, I would never say anything to them that would hurt you or cast you in a bad light. Almost 100% of the time, that's what comes back. And then they proceed to say things to their partner that hurt them and throw them in a bad light to their face. So this in public and in private part is very, very important, because if you can't protect your partner while you're face to face with them, why would they have any confidence that you protect them behind their back? Why would they have any confidence that you do what's best for them when they're not right there? Because when they are right there, you don't. This in public and private, it means we don't make jokes at our partner's expense, even if we think that's a fun part of our relationship. My wife and I can take a ribbing from each other, but I've come to notice I have more of a tendency to do this than she does. I've come to notice if I do too much ribbing in front of other people, it doesn't feel fun anymore, and it's not fun anymore. It's degrading. So in public, we do a lot less of that. We don't do a whole lot of ribbing. We don't do a whole lot of exposing. No snide remarks. Everybody knows we're a unit. That's what the in public part means, is nobody has a question that we are a strong unit, that we're committed to each other, that we have each other's back, because everything we do and say speaks to that. In private, it's the same way. We don't get informal in private. That's a lot of the struggle that couples have, is they're too informal with each other. They take too much latitude. Oh, your family, and family, we let things slide. Maybe your biological family, that's the way it's going to work, because you're never going to be unrelated to them, but you can certainly get unrelated to the person that you're choosing. Everybody has deal breakers. In summary, and this is the point I want to drive home, one of the reasons why I think this is one of the most important aspects of secure functioning, because if you're not willing to do this for each other, and if you don't make this your North Star, what are you doing together? I can go be mistreated by strangers anywhere. I can go roll the dice with people that I don't know. I can do that anywhere at any time. The person that I commit to, that I invest in, that I spend my time with, if this isn't high on my priority list to provide for them and them for me, what are we doing together? That's a whole lot of headache and a whole lot of looking over your shoulder in a relationship that you're going to spend the bulk of your time and the bulk of your energy in. So in summary, I would say, if you're in a committed relationship, do this for your partner, do this for each other. I'll end with some practical steps you can take to make some progress on this. These are some questions that would go into an inventory for yourself. First question is, when are you prone to be lax on this mutual protection, and why? Do you do it when you're tired? Do you get sharp? Do you get sarcastic? I certainly do. Do you do it when you're angry? You move into that, I don't care what happens to you, you're on your own when you're angry. When are you prone to be lax on this commitment to absolute mutual protection, and why? What are your most threatening behaviors and attitudes towards your partner? The key part of there is yours. So if you want to take inventory of where your partner is not hitting the mark for you, and you want to focus on that, and both of you want to focus on that with each other, you have a relationship that's committed to absolute mutual criticism, not absolute mutual protection. Protection is me being aware of what comes in on my boundary and what I allow into the relationship, whether it's from me or somebody else. So take your own inventory there, and then ask yourself, would your partner agree with your answers? I think that's the ultimate litmus test for how real am I getting. If I were to give this list in front of my partner, would they be nodding their head and saying, yeah, that's about the shake of it. That's what's hard for me. That's what I have a problem with. If your answer to that is no, my partner wouldn't agree with this list, check your level of honesty. Check your level of commitment to really understanding yourself and how you show up in your relationship. The last question is, who do you have at your back if you don't have your partner? If you don't protect your partner so they can be at your back, who else do you have? To me, that drives to the whole point of secure functioning. I know for me, my list wouldn't be very long. And it certainly wouldn't be made up of people who know me as well, who have been through as much with me. And if that is a descriptor of your committed relationship at all, that's a really important asset to protect and to foster. Assets that we don't invest in lose value over time. So that is absolute mutual protection.
Thanks, John. I love that last question. Who do you have at your back if not your partner? And, vice versa. Who does your partner have at your back if not you? I mean, that kind of sums up why we do this. Can you do an elevator pitch for absolute mutual protection?
I would say think about a first date with somebody who you know is not committed to this. They aren't going to show up when they say they're going to show up. They're going to put you in dangerous situations. They're not going to be kind, attentive to you. If that was your first date experience with somebody, how likely would it be that they get a second date? Yeah, we get into commitment with each other and we stop doing this basic thing that, put your best foot forward, show people you're invested, show people you're safe. We stop doing that the longer a commitment goes on. This, in my opinion, this is the most important aspect of secure functioning because it's the baseline of safety. Can I count on you, come hell or high water, that you'll protect me? That's not to say that we can't get off base and we can't have lapses, we certainly do, but can I count on this being your North Star? Because if it's not your North Star, what you're going to do, you're going to get into a cycle of hurting me and justifying why that was okay and why you're going to hurt me again in the future. Who's got time for that? Who wants that? That would be the elevator pitch for this.
Yeah, and I like that concept of the North Star. This is our guiding principle, and it kind of feels like it should be. What's the Robert Fulghum book? All I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten.
Yeah.
This kind of feels like that, except, like Fulgham's book, it's stuff we don't learn naturally. And why don't we learn something that seems so, I don't want to say common sense or so obvious, or because it's not, but why don't we learn this basic tenet of relating?
Our evolution is a little bit behind the curve. So everything we do naturally is really good for keeping one organism alive. Everything we need to do in relationships is completely counterintuitive to that. So what makes you great at surviving all alone is terrible for your relationships. And vice versa. What makes you really great at relationships is terrible for you surviving alone. Maybe there's an evolutionary advantage to that. I always think that competing priorities yield better results, or competing passions yield better results. When we have multiple things that we really care about that are important to us, we tend to do both a little bit better, a little more deliberately. I also think that relationships are highly individualized, and it's not like a pack of dogs where just about every dog, unless they have some brain abnormality, they get the whole alpha structure of the pack. Human beings are way more complex than that. So being good at relationships is actually, it requires a lot of learning about your partner specifically. That's why I like the principled approach, because it gives you a place to start and to jump off from. Protection for everybody, I'd say absolute and mutual are pretty set in stone, but protection, that's a varied answer for everybody. And what protects one partner might smother or offend another. Biologically, we're not good at this ultimate need we have, which is to be in a pack. So we have the drive to be in the pack, but fortunately you have a complex brain that can handle abstract things. So approaching this as a problem that you haven't yet learned how to solve, or I need to learn some skills for, that's exactly what this is. I have a need to do it, and I'm not naturally good at it. So let me stop kidding myself and saying I'm great at relationships and always approach with that beginner's mind. I'm always learning. I'm always needing to improve here.
Yeah. It's interesting because, there's the old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way that human beings are. I mean, and we're taught, particularly men, I think, we're taught, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps and take care of yourself. And, we're taught to be the lone wolf, sort of. But in point of fact, research tells us that we do better when we're connected. We live longer, we're healthier, we're happier, we're more successful when we feel connected. But we still have these competing thoughts of like, well, if I'm relying on my partner to protect me, then I must be weak somehow. It's just, do you see a lot of, in your practice, do you see people sort of fighting this idea of mutual protection?
Yeah, and I just saw one yesterday, and that concept of like, this makes me weak, I think that's highly subjective, and oftentimes it's not something we actually examine. So you could think about strength being how much can I do by myself, or you could think strength being how much am I willing to face something scary in order to get what works best for me. And that concept of asking for help, being connected to something makes me weak. The bravest people I know have the best relationships that I know of, because they have to hash things out. They have to take risks with each other. They have to take stands that are not popular with their partners. But they end up with a good relationship because they both know who each other are. And that's incredibly brave to put that out on the line. Yeah, it's easier. Like I feel like sometimes I wrote the book on going it alone. It is much easier, but I'm much happier when I slow down and make sure my relationships can come with me, or that I go with them.
Yeah, I mean, I even go back to your mountain biking career here. It's an individual sport, but you talked about it in our last session. You talked about the lesson you took and how you took it with other people and how you learned so much and got so much better. You reached out, and I mean, this is just sort of a mini microcosm of what we're talking about here with actual partnerships.
I finished this lap I was just shy of 2.5 hours, and the average course time was about 1 hour and 30 minutes. So I was like a full hour behind where most people were doing. This was in the first lap. And I crossed the finish line, and when I saw what time it was, I was really disappointed. I was sad, like, my legs were the last, before I saw, it was a 13.5 mile loop. Before I saw the 13-mile sign, I was like, I'm gonna have to walk the rest of the way. I can't do this. And I see the 13-mile sign. I was like, all right, I can stay in the saddle for another half hour, or for another half a mile. Like I can do this. And I crossed the line so upset, and I was like, the first thing out of my mouth to my teammates was like, I'm really sorry, because that made it so, like, our plan was everyone was going to do 2 laps in the 12 hours. And I said, I'm sorry, I took more time than I should have. And what I got from them was, you did fantastic, way to go, you finished. One of my teammates grabs my bike and goes and puts it on the rack. We go back to our staging area. They're getting me something to drink. Well, tell us about it. How did you do? How did it feel? And immediately it was this opportunity for me to reflect on what went really well in that ride. I didn't get out of the saddle once to climb a hill, which is a record for me. One of the things I worked on in the clinic that I talked about last time was taking turns. As I got to a section with 12 tight switchbacks, which in the past I would have had to get off the bike in between each one, because I wouldn't have been able to make it tight. there were two riders behind me. I could hear them coming up because they had bells on their bikes. I went down those switchbacks. I didn't hear them for another 4 miles. They didn't pass me for another 4 miles. I was really proud I could take that with speed. And the rest of the day, my team really meant this. You did such a good job. I'm so glad we're here together. That's the kind of stuff that my own brain can't do that for me. I don't care what my mindset is, how strong you work on that. Your own brain cannot give you that kind of support.
Yeah, and this is a, just for listeners, extend that to your relationship. When you need support, when you're feeling down on yourself, this is when your partner can step in. This is kind of sometimes the whole point of having a partner, in addition to having fun and creating a life together and things, but supporting each other. And it's just sad that we don't learn it. Okay, let's go to the Q&A. Type your questions into the Q&A, and we'll get to as many as we can. What's your opinion on telling adult children and what to tell? So I'm assuming this is about infidelity and sexual addiction. So talking to adult children.
From my aspect of an adult child, what I want my parents to do is to tell me everything so I can understand where I came from and why my life, up to a certain point, it felt the way that it did. As the parent in that situation, there's a couple things you have to consider. First of all, you have to consider what's the impact on our couple bubble, what's the impact on our system of our kids knowing. Sometimes that can be really freeing. I've worked with some couples where, they've had to have these hushed conversations behind closed doors, making sure that, we don't say recovery or addiction in the house, and or at family gatherings when we have to explain, we can't do something before noon on a Saturday. We can't tell our kids those are our support meeting times. It can be really freeing to say, well, it's out there in the open, and this is what we do, and this is what we're doing to get healthy, and we don't have to hide that. We don't have to be ashamed. So consider the impact on the couple bubble. If you have kids who have poor boundaries or who are over anxious, arming them with information may be an unintentional invitation to put them right in the middle of your relationship. So you also have to be prepared to follow up in supporting your kids with that information. And again, support doesn't always mean we're patting you on the back. Sometimes support is, I know this is heavy. We're telling you so you know what's going on, but we're the ones who will tell you information that we feel like you need to know, not the other way around. What to tell, I think there's different levels of information, and again, that's really specific to the situation. I'd say level one is something like we haven't protected each other. Mom or dad did something to hurt mom or dad or whoever, and there's some things that we're working on. That's like level one information. If something has happened, we're working on it. Level two might be to name terms. One of us has an addiction, or I have an addiction, and that has been unfair to your other parent. Here's what we're doing to work on it. I think that other part of here's what we're doing to work on it is pretty critical. If you're not in that place and there's not an impending divorce and you're still working to figure out what working on it means, I would say hold off on telling your adult children, because again, that can really muddy the waters. The focus of early recovery is on you and your spouse getting healthy and stable, both independently and together. And too many cooks in the kitchen can make that really, really complicated. Kids, even adult kids, can fall into the choosing sides trap, and that can really complicate things. So, in essence, my opinion on that would be, it's not a straight, do it or don't. It's really take time to consider what the impact is going to be, where your relationship is at, what you're ready for, and can you continue to support each other through your kids knowing, because that will open up a whole different can of worms for both of you. So are you in a place where you can support each other with that, or is that adding gasoline to a fire that's already burning pretty hot?
Yeah. What if the adult kids are insistent on details or how do you deal with that? They want to know exactly what you did and how many times and this and that and the other. Is that something that parents should provide, or should they say none of your business?
I think the default needs to be none of your business. Simply because parent systems need to remain parent systems. Your coupleship needs to remain your coupleship. Now, with that being the default answer, I do think it's in bounds to discuss together. Sally keeps asking about this, or Sally wants to know about this, and talk about that with each other. Is there any value to that? Don't take the pressure as the kids of we have to answer this. That's not how boundaries work. But it might be worth considering. There may be some details that are good for our kids to know. And another fair question is, if a kid asks, I want to know about this, ask why. What difference does this make to you? How would that help you? You may find out that kid, intercepted some emails between one parent and an affair partner, and they've had this dark cloud circus going on in their head ever since they knew, and some details might help them to settle, contextualize, and be able to heal themselves. So don't get caught in the trap of question and response. Again, take it really slow, ask good questions, have the default be toward privacy. And it's always easier to give more information than it is to take information back that's been given.
And let's just take this to younger kids. If you've got younger kids, what do they need to know, and what do they not need to know?
The first thing I say consider with younger kids, if they have siblings, the way that sibling systems work is they're the information superhighway. So you have to consider what we tell the oldest, the youngest will know. So you tailor the level of information to the lowest common denominator. And I wouldn't trust my kids at all to say, hey, I'm going to tell you this, but don't tell your brother. Like, I'm just not going to trust that. And that's also, I think, a violation of the sibling system for the parents to come in and say, this is how your system with each other is going to work. That's a violation. So consider age appropriate. Normally for young kids, the concept of sex is big, and the concept of addiction is like unknowable. So combining those two is a lot of overwhelming information. I think talking in terms of the emotion that they see, parent one hurt parent two, and there's some repair that needs to be made. I think this is a good place or a good time to showcase secure functioning principles. Parent one hurt parent two, and just like we talk about with you and your sibling, when that happens, the person who does the hurting has to do some things to make it right. The person who did the hurting has to help the other person feel okay. So you can actually give little kids a lot of context. What have you observed? What are you worried about? That helps you gauge the level of information that they want. I can't count how many times my kids have asked a question and I've given an answer, and I realize like halfway through that answer, I'm like, oh, they're asking about this one little piece of information. Like, they don't really want or need all of this. So again, slow it down, consider who you're talking to and why you're talking to them.
Yeah. I also think with smaller kids, it's important to explicitly state you didn't cause this and you can't fix it. It's between mom and dad. We're working on it. You can ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, but you didn't cause this, because you don't want kids to internalize and think that they've caused something that they didn't cause.
Yeah.
So my husband continues to look at other women when we are out together. He does not always tell the truth about this, even though I catch him doing it. He is in denial and not fully telling his sponsor the truth about his behavior. I don't feel safe. What can I do to help him understand this hurts me? Also, I feel this is him objectifying women and part of his addiction.
Yeah, the big thing that stands out to me here, and this is part of that absolute mutual protection. If your partner comes to you and says, you do this thing that makes me think, normally what that turns into is, no, that's not what I'm doing, or that's not what I'm meaning. Totally misses the point. If we're really going to protect each other, absolutely. I want to make sure my behavior towards you is so airtight that you cannot misunderstand my motive. And if I'm doing something where my motive is up for interpretation, that's on me. So with this objective, the big thing that stands out to me is, he may be looking at these women, and the bottom line is you don't know what's going on in his head, and you're concerned that nobody else does either, because from what you're saying, he doesn't talk to his sponsor, he doesn't talk to his therapist about it. The action solution to this is actually quite simple. There's two parts to it. Number one, when you're in public, you put attention on each other solely. I'm here with you. We're out together. You have no question that my attention is here, because my intention is to be with you. And number two, you have access to each other's thoughts at all times. At any time, I can ask you in Be Fair Game, what are you thinking about? And you answer immediately. It may be, I just noticed that woman wearing a top that's a little racy for me. Again, it's that access, it's the honesty, it's in the moment. That's what provides the safety. So the question, I guess there's not so much a question there. I don't feel safe. Oh, what can I do to help him understand this hurts me? I think approaching it like that. You have this behavior that honestly, I don't know what it's about, and I don't trust you when you tell me what it's about. You're leaving a lot of room for doubt there for me. This is hard for me. It would be like if you 3 times a week said you got to leave the house to run an errand at 11 p.m. That's not feeling good to me. So your behavior is leaving enough room for doubt that I don't feel safe. I need you to tighten that up. I think at the very least, I need you to make sure you're talking with your sponsor about this. I need you to make sure you're talking with your therapist about this. That would be the place to start. And I think it's always hard to get somebody to understand your emotions and your fears when it turns into this is what I see you doing, and I know you're doing it, and that's why it hurts me. I would stay away from some of the interpretation and some of the absolutes of, and I would stay with observable behavior. When your eyes are scanning all around, the story I make up is that you're looking for people to be aroused by. That's really painful for me. Hope that helps.
Yeah, and I would add, just from the addict perspective, are you looking at that woman over there? Answer honestly, yes, I was looking at her. Her shirt's a little tight. I was trying not to objectify her, and also judging her a little bit for wearing that shirt, which she shouldn't be wearing in this setting. Yeah. And answer honestly, because if you don't answer honestly or don't answer, which is often nothing, I'm not looking at anything. Well, your partner gets to run wild with their imagination about what you're doing, and they're always going to pick something 10 times worse than what you were actually doing. So you might as well come clean with the truth. Otherwise, they're going to think you did something worse.
I have a colleague who says truth is the only nurturing mother. And again, in nurture, it's not all about feeling good all the time. It's about having consistency. It's about knowing what's happened. It's about having something firm to come back to. So the truth is the only thing that's rock solid, even if it's difficult. I just echo Scott's advice there. From the addict side, tell the truth and tell it faster. In the long run, you will leave less room for your partner to be in distress and panic.
Yeah. How does a mother enmeshed man, 2 years with no contact with the narcissistic mother, but has an abuse neglect history, living alone in an apartment, the mother enmeshed man, single, not acting out. How does this individual make the most of being single in recovery with complex post-traumatic stress disorder? How can the mother enmeshed man change his relational template to disrupt the likelihood of repetition compulsion that recreates the original abuse dynamic should he return to dating? So we've got a single sex addict in recovery who's doing well, but a mother enmeshed man who stayed away from his mother, narcissistic mother for a while. Now he wants to return to dating, but doesn't want to repeat the mistakes in the past. How do we go about this?
The single biggest protective factor I would see there is whether or not this person has a clear vision of what they want their life to be. If your vision of what you want your life to be includes a partner always, or includes, I want to have these experiences with a partner, I want to be like this with a partner, you will get lost in a relationship. That vision has got to include, this is how I want to feel in my partnerships. This is how I want to feel in my life. This is what's important to me. And that can feel counterintuitive to a lot of enmeshed men that I work with, because they're really sensitive to selfishness, and they're really sensitive to self-centeredness. They're really good at being caretakers for others. You have to think in terms of sustainability here. One of the biggest factors of burnout in any caring relationship is there's nothing that goes back into filling your tank. You're constantly depleting. So the way you can make the most of your time being single is get to know yourself really, really well. Learn how to take really, really good care of yourself, and get that relationship and that functionality working so well that it's not hard for you to identify what's not going to work in a relationship for you, or what you're going to need to work with a partner on. So for example, if that daily exercise, daily movement is one of the best things you can do for your brain and your body and your soul, and you start dating someone who tears that down, doesn't understand it, speaks derogatorily towards it, that's probably not going to be a good fit for you. And it's not a matter of, I don't respect you. It's, I respect myself enough to not put myself in a relationship, in a situation where I'm not going to be able to be good, or I'm not going to be able to do good. And we do good when we're in a firm place ourselves. We can give a lot of compassion. We can give a lot of attentiveness. We can actually give more than we can when we're coming from a place of depletion.
And all sex addicts, with or without secondary issues like enmeshment, particularly if they're single and want to start dating, should do so with a plan. We use what we call a traffic signals dating plan. If you want to email me, scott@seekingintegrity.org, I'll send you a PDF of that exercise. It starts with goals. What are my goals for dating? What do I want to get out of dating? And then you create red lights. They're still married. Okay, that's a red light. Yellow lights, is a couch potato when I like to exercise. And green lights are, we both love to go mountain biking or hiking or whatever. And we have friends who get along with each other. Those are green lights. And it also involves lots and lots and lots of feedback with your support network. Because sex addicts, particularly with enmeshment issues, our pickers are broken. So we need lots and lots of feedback. So I'll gladly mail you a PDF, scott@seekingintegrity.com. Just email me and I'll shoot it out to you if you want.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Don't do it alone. Have your plan and have lots of accountability. Have a council of care. Yeah. So especially early in recovery, when you start dating again, you should probably be doing the play-by-play soon after the date and through the relationship with people that you trust, who know you, and that you can tell the truth to.
Yeah.
Because again, that urge to be with and to not be alone, that can really overpower some of our better judgment. And a council of care, people who know you want the best for you, they can help to call you out when you're making troublesome compromises.
Yeah, I love the term council of care. I usually just call it a posse. But and particularly when you first start dating, even if it's just a coffee date, like a 30-minute coffee date with somebody, bookend it with somebody from your council of care. Because if it doesn't go well, you may want to act out. If it does go well, you may want to act out. I mean, you don't want to act out because you're trying to start dating in a healthy way. So yeah. When in a relationship with a sex addict, absolute mutual protection does not exist, as they are not protecting you. Through recovery, I can see my husband is improving in this, but can it ever reach a point of knowing that my husband will protect me no matter what? Great question.
I would say no. In actuality, it never reaches a point where we know someone will protect us no matter what. I know my dog will, but that's because...
Is this before or after sex addiction, or both?
I would say both. I would say both, and even independently of sex addiction. I know my dog will protect me no matter what, but her brain is really simple. She's got that pack drive. So I'll just reiterate what I said before. It's not that we know that protection will always happen. It's we know that will be what we come back to. So last night, for example, we've taken to hiking at night because it's cooler and I've missed doing it during the day. So usually take a late night hike. And last night I'm hiking with my wife and my kids. And I made a comment that I found out later was insensitive. I didn't feel it in the moment, didn't see it in the moment. And when my wife talked to me about it, when she brought it up, immediately what I felt was defensiveness. Well, that's not what I mean. Luckily, I didn't say it. And I took a deep breath and I remembered this. My job is to protect her no matter what. So the response was really easy. And I said, you're right. I'm really sorry. I need to be more careful with that. I need to know that, this is a spot of sensitivity for you. That I say you can have 100% confidence in. You can get to a point where you have 100% confidence that when your partner realizes they have not protected you, they will return to a protective stance double time. That can happen.
Yeah, it's not absolute mutual perfect protection. It's absolute mutual protection. And yeah, that's why I asked, like, before or after, it doesn't really matter. Nobody does this perfectly. I do want to point out that, and I think John will confirm this, relationships can become more protective and more intimate in recovery than they ever were before discovery. Thoughts?
Amen. In fact, I think a lot of couples in recovery have an advantage over couples who have not had to go through that, because you have to do so much digging deep, and you can't afford to ride roughshod over what your relationship needs to do. You have to be exact about it. You have to be committed to it. Couples in recovery can have incredibly strong relationships.
Yeah. Is repeatedly admiring another woman or man's looks healthy for a sex addict, healthy for a relationship?
My attention goes to admiring is in quotes here, so I'm guessing that's not actually what you mean.
Objectifying.
Yeah, that's not what you see your partner doing or think that your partner's doing. So in general, I'll say healthy for an SA. I think that depends on what their history is, and that kind of I guess a arousal template, sexual health plan. That's something that a counsel of care, a good therapist can help with. What actually is going on here for you? What actually is your experience here? I was working with a client a couple of weeks ago, and he's telling me about this acting out behavior that for months and months until I love this. This always feels good to me. And so I had him walk me through in detail, well, what happens here? And then he gets to the end and he said, and I feel like a little boy afterward. I feel terrible. I feel small. And then he said, but I can always go back to the beginning here and I can make that go away. The insight that he had was, this actually isn't all good. As I stop and look at what this actually is about for me, I can't tell myself that I love this because I actually really hate this part of it that always comes with it. So that's something that someone in recovery, they have to do the work to figure out what's going on for them. And they can't just say, no, this is fine for me without doing due diligence. They really have to check it out to know. For couples in general, that depends on the agreement that the couple has with each other. If that's an existential threat to one partner, it's not a good idea for the relationship. If that's something that both partners can get into together, like I'm thinking about, sculpture, art, if that kind of admiring the human form is something that, gives meaning and purpose and it bonds us together, more power to you. But again, you have to do your due diligence there. You have to actually work that out. There's not a hard and set, good for everybody, not good for everybody there.
Yeah, I just want to pull out of the chat feature, and this is a follow-up to this. The addict uses the word admiring, used admiring during disclosure rather than objectifying, I assume. And then it says he has had sex dreams about these women. And then the question is, are are there typically sex dreams if it's just healthy admiring? um,
So the realm of dreams is so tricky. That's dealing with the subconscious and, the degree of control that's there, what gets turned into a sex dream and what's not. Like, I don't think that's a really good indicator of where someone's at in recovery.
Particularly in early recovery, like
Yeah.
acting out dreams are just crazy.
Yeah, I do think what you feed the hopper with makes a difference, and that's where again, there has to be a reality check. There has to be due diligence done on what is this actually for me, how does it affect me, and I'm the one who ultimately can't. I'm the only one who can ultimately determine what's good for me and what's not, and that takes a level of commitment, a level of honesty with myself that most people early in recovery don't do well with. They're not there yet.
Yeah. But I do just want to point out that, admiring in quote marks like this, it just says objectifying. And as a sex addict, continuing to objectify is not a healthy behavior, and it needs to stop. But it's also a habit, and it takes time to break the habit.
Yeah.
It's not going to, I'm not going to stop objectifying just because I say I'm going to stop objectifying. I have to work on it. It took me a couple of years before I could actually walk down the street and not get distracted. And that was hard work on my part, with a rubber band on my wrist and the 3-second rule, and, calling people and all of it. It just took me a couple of years to really break that very ingrained habit.
Yeah.
Is that normal, John?
Yeah. From a neurological perspective, every neural network that gets used over and over again becomes the neural network of preference. So in order to change that, not only do you have to rest that network, you have to create a competing network. And that takes a lot of time. I mean, there's dedication and commitment alone does not change the brain. Dedication and commitment alone is what, metaphorically, it gets you to the gym every morning, but it doesn't make you strong.
Yeah, and for people who are interested in the neurobiology, tune in Wednesday nights to Dr. David Fawcett and I. We talk about neurobiology a lot. and we talk about those pathways that are burned in the brain, and we have to make new pathways and let the other one kind of get overgrown, like and weedy, like a hiking trail that's not used. How far in recovery can I expect my sex-addicted husband to show some empathy for my triggers? He's been sober 22 months, going to group, 12-step, has a CSAT. Thank you. So when is empathy going to enter the picture?
When you learn it. It is not.
Well, this is the betrayed partner who wants to know. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying about the person in recovery. Empathy is not something that's inborn in us. It comes from a very natural place, but it's actually a skill set we have to learn. So getting sober and doing well in recovery alone will not make you empathetic. Empathy is something that you have to work at. So, the good news here is it sounds like there's a decent foundation to start building that on. And I would say if this is something you're needing, you might approach your partner and say, I'm so proud of all the work you've done in recovery. Sober for 22 months is amazing. I'm glad about your commitment to group and your 12-step and your therapy. I would really like you to put a focus on empathy. I could really use more of that from you. Would you be willing to?
Yeah, and if he's got a CSAT, that can help. But again, empathy, I say I'm going to be more empathetic to you. It's not going to happen overnight. It was a lot of work. My sex addicted husband says this is a follow up to the admiring husband. He says he doesn't get aroused by looking at women. He just feels attracted to them. Is there a difference? I'm just loving this guy's
functionally.
It's just wonderful denial.
Functionally, yes, there's a difference, but I would wonder, have you actually done your due diligence on that? Attracted is I feel open to approach. Aroused is like my pupils are dilated, my erectile tissue is working. I feel blood moving from all the other parts of my body to more to my genitalia and my limbs. Neurologically they are very different, but are you sure that's what's going on? And that would be my big question to this spouse is, how do you know that's what's happening? And do you know well enough what's happening with you that you can explain it to a fifth grader and they can understand it? Or sorry, a 5-year-old, and they can understand it. That's the ultimate marker of you actually being in possession and being able to observe what's actually happening with you, is if you can explain it in terms that a 5-year-old can understand, you've probably got a really good grip on what's happening. If you explain it to another person and they're getting confused, or they're not sure what's happening, or it doesn't sound like what you're saying, you probably don't have a really good grip yet on what's going on with you. So keep working on it. Keep exploring that.
Let's do one more real quick. My husband raged at me and gaslighted and didn't talk to me for 24 hours. Then he pretends nothing happened. I tried to talk to him about what's on my mind, and that's when he rages and gaslights and does this. I don't know how to approach him. Any thoughts on how to approach somebody who rages and gaslights and disappears?
So that's abuse. So I would say the way you approach that is, again, very behaviorally marked. When I ask you how you feel and you raise your voice and you make big gesticulations, and then you tell me I'm crazy and then you leave the room, that, to put it lightly, doesn't feel good to me. I need you to work on that. I need to see improvement in 3 months or 6 months or whatever timeline you feel is acceptable to you. And if that doesn't happen, I'm going to be ready to make a different arrangement here. I can't keep doing this. That's how I would say you approach that. There's no combination there to unlock, rather than this, you got to hit them between the eyes with what's going to work for you and what's not, and what you're willing to do if they're not willing to get things to do their part and things working better for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry you're in that situation. Somebody asked for me to repeat the email for the traffic lights dating plan, scott@seekingintegrity.com, SCOTT@seekingintegrity.com. I'll be happy to send a PDF out. We are out of time. John, thank you for a great topic and a great discussion. And everybody, thank you for great questions this week. Great stuff.
Yeah, so, this is fun. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Yep, I'll see you later.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.